Today, I'd like to share a little bit about Oskar Schindler, well known, of course, from Schindler's List, a great movie that many have seen and enjoyed. So we know a little bit about his life, but I think he's a very interesting person because he brings about several aspects for us to reflect upon in terms of someone trying to do good, but yet coming from a background where you really most probably would not expect that. So he raises some interesting dynamics for us. He was born in 1908 on April 28th, and he was a German industrialist, not really a man of faith, and we would say not a man of conventional virtue. He was expelled in 1924 from a technical school he was attending because he was forging his report cards. He raced motorcycles in mountain races. Married on March 6th, 1928, to Emily Pelsey, who died in 2001. 18 months he spent in the Czech army, rose to the rank of a lance corporal in the 10th Infantry Regiment of the 31st Army. Several concerns, however, that he worked for went bankrupt, so he had difficulty getting like a really good job. And of course, it was a difficult time during the Depression, after World War One. Certainly a challenging time for someone to follow a career and to get a good job. He took a job with Jaroslav Simic Bank of Prague from 1931 to 1938, but he was arrested several times for public drunkenness in 1931 and 1932, so had a little problem with alcohol. He had an affair with Oriel Schlegel, who was a school friend. She bore him a daughter, Emily, in 1933, and a son, Oskar Jr., in 1935. Schindler later claimed that the boy was not his own. Schindler's father was also an alcoholic. He abandoned his wife in 1935. She died a few months later after a lengthy illness. Oskar, we would say, was kind of an opportunist. He was a philanderer. He became a member of the Nazi Party. He joined the Abwehr, the military intelligence service of Nazi Germany, in 1936. He joined for a very simple reason. He needed the money. He had a drinking problem, was chronically in debt. So he collected information on railway and troop movements for the German government, and this was helpful information because he knew Czechoslovakia pretty well. The Germans were thinking about, getting into Czechoslovakia, invading it. So this was, a good opportunity for him to share the information that he knew and to make kind of a name for himself, a good reputation for himself within the Abwehr. He was arrested, however, for espionage by the Czechoslovak government, but was released later under terms of the Munich Agreement. So the Munich Agreement, of course, gave lands in Czechoslovakia to the Germans, and part of it involved the release of those who were held, and Schindler was one of those. He worked then in Poland, so he went from Czechoslovakia to Poland with the Abwehr, and he worked there in 1939, collecting information for the Nazis. Very important because, again, they were going to invade Poland, so having that information was important. In 1939, he acquired an enamelware factory in Krakow, Poland, with the help of Jewish investors. He employed 1,700 workers, of whom 1,000 were Jews. He enjoyed a lavish lifestyle and had several extramarital affairs. Made a fortune employing Jewish slave labor in occupied Poland. Jews were cheaper to employ than the other Poles. The wages were set by the occupying Nazi regime, and so all that extra money he got was very helpful, obviously, for him. So worked out well. Now, you might say, what kind of changed his life? He went really from someone who was trying to make a lot of money, someone who led a life that was kind of mixed with, several extramarital affairs, problems with alcohol. His father abused alcohol, difficult relationship with his father. What, however, though, led to this activity where he would save the Jewish people from the concentration camps. Conversion happened as he observed a slaughter in the ghetto of the Jewish people in Poland. He had worked with this factory in Poland, employed a lot of Jewish workers, helped to get the factory by Jewish backers. When he saw this slaughter, something changed within him. He was like, we can't really go along with this. This is wrong. This is immoral. And so he changed and really became different after that in terms of his efforts to help Jewish people survive. So Schindler protected his workers by having them stay in the factory overnight. After he decided that, he said, I'm going to try to save as many Jewish people as I can. Whatever I can do to save them, I will do to save them. His wife, Emily, was very helpful in that regard as well. Keeping those workers in his factory overnight while that slaughter was taking place, again, very important in terms of saving so many lives. Now, Oskar was arrested 3 times, once for kissing a Jewish girl on the cheek, who was able to get out because of his contacts within the Nazi Party and bribery. He was very skillful with a lot of the contacts he had in terms of bribery, in terms of getting things in the black market that people needed. And so he got a lot of advantages and a lot of second chances and a lot of help that obviously others would not have gotten because he was respected as a employer. It was thought that he was in the business of supporting the war effort, so they cut him a little slack that way. And also the bribery, of course, helped tremendously. He worked very closely with the Jewish underground. They trusted him, he trusted them. They knew that he was a good man and that they would get help from him. His factory became a haven for the rescue and preservation of his Jews. And that became his only real business. The other business never really took place. He camouflaged it. His real business was, how many Jewish people can I save? He is credited with saving 1,200 Jewish people. His Abwehr connections helped Schindler protect his Jewish workers from deportation and death in the concentration camps. Schindler gave Nazi officials, increasing larger bribes, more luxurious gifts. So he upped the ante a bit, and that also helped in his operation. But he faced many dangers. This was a difficult operation. Of course, he was under suspicion many times, arrested the 3 times, and it was not an easy task, obviously, in terms of hiding people, in terms of trying to save as many as he could. He decided that the only way that this was really going to work is to move his factory from Poland to where it was very dangerous, back to Czechoslovakia, so where he had started out. So what he did is he convinced the SS Hafenführer Amon Gath, commandant of the nearby Krakow Plauzow concentration camp to move his factory to Berneck in the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. His armaments factory, though, was a cotton game. He was guard. It was guarded by the SS troops. It was. His whole operation was run with efficiency, but it produced nothing. Schindler spent his entire fortune to keep his factory running until May of 1945, when the war ended. Exhausted all of his money. He shamed the guards due to disobeying the orders to exterminate the surviving workers. So he even took on the SS, the guards, shamed them, and the workers were saved. Now, we say, why did he do it? He was brought up as a Catholic. He had some Catholic education, but not a very religious person. He lived out his life pretty much in obscurity. He moved to West Germany. He was supported by assistance payments from Jewish relief organizations. That's how he survived. He received a partial reimbursement for his wartime expenses, and that helped him to move with his wife, Emily, to Argentina, where they took up farming. However, he went bankrupt in 1958. Schindler left his wife and returned to Germany. He failed at several business ventures there and relied on financial support from what we call the Schindler group, those who he helped, those on the famous Schindler's List. He was inducted into the list of righteous Gentiles in 1993, and he was buried at Jerusalem at his request, the only former member of the Nazi Party to be so honored. His sentiment was very simple and direct. I felt the Jews were being destroyed. I had to help them. There was no choice. So he presents for us a very interesting picture. He certainly was not a perfect person. He doesn't seem to be a deeply religious person. But his religious motive was his sense of outrage at how people that he knew and accepted and loved were being treated. Something in him said, this isn't right. I have to help them. And so that sentiment, that moment of conversion, caused him to do something remarkable, to help so many people survive. Really an amazing story of a man who really you wouldn't expect to do this type of thing. And so it kind of teaches us a very simple lesson of not being judgmental in many times, right? We might look at, well, who would be the perfect candidate to engage in this type of activity? Would it be somebody who had a problem with alcohol, who had many extramarital affairs, who used bribery and all? Well, we don't know. People that respond in certain conditions, respond and live lives of helping others, part of it is a mystery. Something in their heart is touched, something in their conscience is rises to the top, and they act in remarkable ways. And Oskar seems to be one of